What's up, Dave?
How you doing, Dave?
Great.
Do you have a game one starter?
Yeah, Walker's going to start game one.
Okay, so kind of the same setup. And do you have a game three starter for this series, or are you
Not
waiting
yet.
to hold off
Yeah,
on that?
exactly.
Dave, in the years past, Clayton has been asked to come out of the bullpen for a variety of different reasons. Do you see that scenario coming up in the next two rounds if you're able to advance?
Well, I think that if he starts game two, it's game seven is would be regular rest. So I don't know. I think that right now we're just kind of more in the state of he's going to start game two, and we'll see where we go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Next question's from Alanna Rizzo. Go ahead.
Dave, you guys have been so solid in all of the games you have played so far this postseason, and I certainly understand that you take every opponent as a formidable one. But how do you make sure that there's no complacency or expectation because you haven't necessarily had that much adversity, I guess?
Well, I think to the complacency question, when you're in the league championship series, I don't think that there'd be complacency. I think that we've been playing good baseball over the last month with the various types of opponents. And I think our guys do a very good job of just kind of really focusing on ourselves playing well while preparing for whatever opponent it is.
How pleased are you with the way that you guys have maintained a very business-like mindset? And while you're celebrating the boxes that you check along the way, you can tell by listening to your players that they're not satisfied with what you've accomplished so far.
Yeah, there's certainly a balance. You've got to enjoy the ride, the moment, the small victories, whether it be in a game or winning a baseball game. But our goal is very clear, and we have 8 more wins to do that. And it comes with staying focused and playing good baseball. So, every single player understands that.
You know your opponent, obviously, in Atlanta. What makes them dangerous this year?
I think that, you look at their offense. I think people speak to their offense initially. It's a very balanced offense. They can slug you. They're aggressive on the bases. They catch the baseball defensively, and they can pitch. And they got a strong bullpen, so they check a lot of boxes. It's gonna be a fun series.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Next question's from Ken Gurnick. Go ahead.
Dave, when you look at Cody Bellinger, first half last year being about as good as anybody could be, and this year kind of erratic, where would you put him at this point on that whole scale from the best to what he's been this year?
I would say certainly that first half of the season, he was the best player in baseball, and the numbers spoke to that. And then he sort of got into a funk. I think that he's more I like where he's at right now. I think there's going to be more in there. I think his at-bat quality from at-bat to at-bat is considerably better than it has been all year. I think the defensive engagement is as good as it's been all year. So I expect Cody to continue to impact this next series.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Next question's from Jorge Castillo. Go ahead.
Dave, you mentioned you guys might have some kind of sim game. Just wondering what you guys have done or are going to be doing in these 3 days between yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Yeah, yesterday was just a day of pretty much a day of rest for most people. Some guys came in and got treatment. Some pitchers came in and played catch. Maybe some guys got a workout in. Nothing on the field. Today we're going to do batting practice per usual, and we're going to do a sim game, probably 4 to 5 innings. We're going to get Gonsolin to throw some innings against some hitters live. So guys will take at bat, and then tomorrow we're going to do more of the same.
Do you anticipate using, 4 or 5 starters in a traditional role, like a traditional starter role, or will you guys maybe mix and match and do different things?
I would say the traditional starter, but how we get there to games 3, 4, and 5, we might talk about.
Do you anticipate any roster changes?
We're going to talk through it. I think the one thing that we have to decide is Eddie Rios. He's getting better every day. with that groin injury. So he took some swings yesterday, ran about 75%. So I don't know how he is today. So we still have some time on that. And then we're going to continue to talk through a little bit more, maybe the bullpen.
What do you think about the bullpen?
Oh, we're just going to continue to make sure all the matchups make sense for us.
And lastly, for me, you guys had Travis d'Arnaud last year, but for about 5 minutes. Just if you can recall, like what was the thinking there in acquiring him, and what did you guys see that made him, I guess someone who can kind of break out like this?
Well, just a lot of his ability to control the strike zone. Bob Guerin had him in New York, raved about the character, the teammate perspective. And as far as the bat, just thought there was some upside. And so, we had him, and he worked with our hitting guys a little bit before we activated him, and just didn't make sense for our roster. And he went over to the Rays and really got an opportunity and flourished and carried it over to the Braves. So, yeah, he's a name to reckon with for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next question is from Bill Plunkett. Go ahead.
And Dave, when you say you don't know how you're going to get there for those game 3, 4, 5 starters, does that mean those guys are going to be available out of the bullpen in games 1 and 2 again?
Yeah, I just don't think that it just makes sense for us to close optionality, in games 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So I think that for us, we know 1 and 2, and I honestly don't know who 3, 4, and 5 are. So I think that until we need to answer that question, I'll feel good about it. But right now, I just don't feel the need.
With the Braves offense, your lineup and theirs ranked 1, 2 in pretty much every category this year. When you break down their lineup, what do you see? Do you see similarities between the two?
Yeah, I think that, they, number one is a slug. They hit everything, so I think that we got to execute, make good pitches. It's an aggressive offense. In the box, on the bases. There's a lot of young athleticism on both sides, and they also got the veteran guys that have been known to drive in runs on both sides. So it's very, very, they parallel one another pretty well.
With you've gotten to this point a handful of times now. The perception was that you got Mookie Betts and added him to be the difference maker to get this team over the hump. What difference has he made so far?
Well, Mookie's is certainly a part of it, but it still takes right now this year 27 other guys still to do their part. I think to your question, he's really impacted on the hitting side as far as understanding the value of winning 90 feet, controlling the strike zone. We talk about it, but when a player of his magnitude talks about it as well, echoes it, and does it in every at-bat, every game, certainly goes a long way. Defensively, he's a game changer, and just has done a lot for us on the bases defensively. So he just made everyone around him better. But with that said, we all got to do our part.
Yeah, the offense has let you down at times in past postseasons. Does that extra length that he gives you and the influence make you feel better about that not happening again?
It does. And I think even the 5 games we played this year, the intent, the game, not the game planning, but the intent, the approach has been considerably better than I recall.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Next question is from Scott Braun. Go ahead.
Hey, Doc. Congrats on making it to the next round. Had 2 things for you. First off, now that you've played here quite a bit, what's this ballpark like, and how much has it helped to get some games under your belt here in the regular season and playoffs, as the Braves have never played here before?
It's actually starting to feel like home, which is sort of crazy. But the infield plays true. It's like Arizona, which we're used to that as far as the playing surface. There's some quirks in the outfield lines as far as the enclosures and things that kind of it can kick off the wall. And also the park plays big. So we've had the roof open, but it's still played pretty big, but it's a beautiful ballpark. It plays more to the pitcher, but there's a lot of outfield grass out there for base hits.
And then secondly, I just wanted to ask you about, now you've got Acuna and Betts as the leadoff hitters for both sides. So how annoying is it to say dynamic kind of player like that with power and speed and everything else. I mean, you have one of your own, and also just wanted to run through why you think both of those players are so successful in the leadoff spot specifically. And I know, there's a little story to the background of Mookie in the 2 spot a bit, and then finding home again leading off.
Well, they both impact the game in every aspect, in the box, in the field, on the bases. They're both energizing players that players gravitate towards, fans gravitate towards. Having them at the top, taking potentially 5 at bats or getting the most at bats on your club, and kind of igniting, setting the tone. They both do that for their clubs. Yeah, and Brian over there has a guy in Ronald, and I have a guy in Mookie. So it's going to be fun, but there's a lot of other players that are going to have to play well for each team to win.
Next question is from Mike DiGiovanna. Go ahead.
Thanks. Hey, Dave.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oops, you there?
Yeah, go again, DG.
Yeah. No matter how the pitching plays out, with 7 games in 7 days, will you have your starters skip their between starts bullpens so they're at least available to pitch on their throw days in games?
I don't see that happening. I see that Clayton and Walker will do their regular sides and be ready to pitch on their regular rest days.
So would maybe Urias have a better chance of being a swing guy, though?
Absolutely. He's going to pitch very meaningful innings.
How important is that to have a guy who's done both those things, especially very recent history?
It's great. And I think that, in theory, on paper, you can look at matchups and say that it could work. But until you really do it, and you have to take the player, certainly's mind and experience has got to be a factor. And Julio's done it. He's had success in all roles, so makes us feel more confident. But with that said, whatever role that we put him in, I know he's going to be ready, and they're all important.
Thanks.
Next question is from Jared Diamond. Go ahead.
Hey, Dave. So I'm sure you well know that the Braves had an incredible amount of success this year hitting against high velocity, like that 97 and up, which is something that you guys do probably as well as anyone in the league. So sort of sets up this sort of pitch to their, your strength or to their weakness sort of situation. I mean, how do you sort of view that generally in a situation like that?
I just still think it's, nowadays guys we always talk about timing a bullet. You still got to make quality pitches. And, regardless if it's 97 or we saw last night 101 or whatever, if it's not located, guys are going to still square it up. So I think that there's a sequencing component and a quality of the fastball location component.
And just one last thing. Besides Andrew, the other 3 GMs left in this postseason are all guys that Andrew hired who worked for him. I'm just curious what you think that says about him as a leader, that he's sort of created this GM tree that's had all this success here.
No, Andrew's a brilliant baseball mind. He is very forward thinking, very inclusive. He relates to the player. So he's great, and he's made me a better manager. And so it's no surprise that, you're looking at all these guys around that have some connection to Andrew and his staffs in years past.
Next question is from Cary Osborne. Go ahead.
Dave, you've seen so much different pitching this year, from traditional starters to the other day, nearly a dozen pitchers. What is it about the Braves staff that you have not seen this year? And also, what are the biggest challenges that staff presents you guys?
Well, I think, Max Fried has really come on to be one of the elite pitchers in baseball. So we've seen him in the past a little bit. So I think that's one thing that is a big deal. Ian Anderson, we haven't seen him at all. I know it's really good velocity, so we just don't have a lot of familiarity with him. So I think their bullpen is a strength, and we're familiar with some of these guys, but then those guys collectively are very good and have been very successful. They just do a good job preventing runs. I mean, I think they've done it better than anybody this year in the postseason. So we've got our work cut out for us.
Thanks, Dave.
Next question is from Tyler Kepner. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dave, you guys had a lot of starters last year who didn't return. Ryu and Hill and Maeda and Stripling, and your pitching got even better. How did you sort of fill those roles, and why were you guys comfortable moving on from some pretty good pitchers with staff that could be even better, I guess?
Tyler, yeah, that's a great point. And to be able to move on from 3 All-Stars and to backfill with guys that we did, it's a credit to the organization. You're talking about Tony Gonson, who was an outfielder. You're talking about Dustin May, who's now 22, who are pitching meaningful innings. So you're talking about scouting, development, and a culture here that these guys can thrive. And now you're talking about Pryor and Connor McGinnis, Josh Bart, all these guys that are on the pitching side. So it's just, for me, I'm just very fortunate to be around, top to bottom, a very good organization where you can move on from superstars to then arguably get better. Yeah.
Yeah. And you talked yesterday and again today a little bit about controlling strike zone, and that's what you do better this year than last year. When you say that, controlling the strike zone, what exactly are you getting? And it's not just walks and home runs; it's getting the right pitch to hit and do damage on, right?
Yeah, I mean it's really every pitch. I think that when you can trust running counts and making the opposition continue to make quality pitches, it's stressful. And when you can do that 1 through 9, you have a tendency to run pitch counts up, get in the bullpen, and then get a chance for a mistake to then promote slug. And if not, you take your base and create more stress. So, winning a 2-1 pitch turns into a 3-1 pitch instead of a 2-2 pitch, 2-1 chase. So that's what we're doing a very good job of. And, when we do that, I'll take us against anyone.
Thank you.
Next question is from Maria Torres. Go ahead.
Hey, Dave, I just wanted to follow up on d'Arnaud. Obviously, you didn't get to work with him for long, but did you get the sense that getting that brief opportunity with you was important for him, given where he was in his career at that moment?
I do. Travis, I got to know him briefly, and I just loved everything about him. Just really nice way about him. There's a confidence, but there's a humility, and he really wanted to be a Dodger. His family grew up being Dodger fans, and so he had that opportunity, although it was short-lived. But he had a chance to work with some of our hitting guys while he was with us for that brief time, and I think had an opportunity to clean some things up. But I couldn't be happier for him in his career. I don't like seeing him in the 4-hole against us for this next week, but really happy for him.
Thank you.
Question from Eric Steven. Go ahead.
Dave, I know 5-game series and 7-game series is different, but with Dustin May last round, was the thought process with him trying to balance maybe having him impact 2 to 3 games rather than just one with maybe the same number of total innings?
That's exactly our thought process, Eric. And you're also putting a guy that had never pitched, with 1 day's rest, so to not put him in harm's way in any way also played into that. So there's a balance between running a guy out there to get outs, but also taking care of him, but also maximizing performance in a particular series. So all that stuff came into our thought process. Yes.
Is that hard to sort of balance where, you see some of these teams that are using bullpen games because they're kind of out of starters, where you guys have 5 capable starters to not stick to that? Was that kind of a hard discussion?
I wouldn't say hard. It's more of a discussion where you just try to optimize your talent, your arms, matchups potentially to get 27 outs. And however, we decide to do that, another team decides to do that. There's a lot that goes into it. But when you're talking about the options that we have, they're all pretty dang good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question is from Ron. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dave, with as good as Austin Barnes and Will Smith have been offensively, is it in your plans to perhaps have both of them in the lineup at the same time?
Well, they were in game 2 last series. I would expect the same thing in game 2 this series. And then as we look out to 3, 4, and 5, I'll make a decision.
And then the final question is from Bob Bro. He asked that the fans have been sort of absent this season. but on Monday the team has set up a drive-in situation for fans at Dodger Stadium. Can you talk about how this might help the fans?
Yeah, I heard there is a drive-in situation at Dodger Stadium. I think it's fantastic. I think it's just, I guess this year, which is so unique to everyone, that it gives Dodger fans an opportunity to be together, instead of in their individual homes, watching us, rooting us on. So to kind of share the same space, I think will be very cool. I haven't been to a drive-in in a long time, but I don't know how it's going to play out as far as optics, but I assume that Stan and Lon are going to make it fantastic, and you're going to get your Dodger dogs. But I think the main thing is, people getting Dodger towels and being together, yelling and screaming for our club is kind of cool.